Oh my God. This is surreal. Oh, golly. Oh, man.
Here, go stand in front of it real quick.
Okay. It doesn't get bigger and better than that, man.
So our next position in the plane and job role would be the navigator. So in this particular model, he's immediately behind the bombardier to the left, which is his navigation workstation. But he's responsible for manning both these guns, correct?
Yes, those are his like combat duty stations. So he's responsible for these two guns. And when they're not actively being attacked, he's responsible for navigating the aircraft to its target and back to base.
Okay.
So this specific one is modified from what it originally would have been, the F model. He has his drift meter on this side. Originally, the drift meter would have been behind me on the right side of the aircraft, and you actually can see that in other B-17s. This one was modified, put it on the left-hand side, and they had to drop the table down from where it originally was to accommodate that.
Knowing the direction and speed of a crosswind during flight is very important for navigation, and the drift meter in the B-17 helped to calculate exactly that. The angle of the nose has to be turned into the crosswind to avoid being blown off course. This angle is called the drift angle. This is critical for the navigator to know in order to effectively plot and navigate his course. The drift meter currently inside the Memphis Belle is the B5 drift meter, which is horizontally mounted through the side of the aircraft and was seen typically mounted above the navigator's desk or in other models behind the navigator on the right-hand side. The drift meter essentially serves two functions. The first is to calculate drift caused by crosswind, and it essentially works kind of like a China graph, whereby the navigator peers through his optic down onto the ground, provided you can see it through cloud cover or daylight, and then he works off using a known point, which is viewed through a section of cross grids on the optic, and then he uses like a pencil type device that works like a China graph, and he traces movement over a known reference point, and that essentially can tell him the directions that the aircraft might be drifting. For example, heading on a true north direction, however crosswind is pushing you to the left or the right in a northeasterly direction, for example, the drift meter can be used to calculate what that drift is so you can maintain your true heading. The second is a method of gaining airspeed by first using a known reference point on the ground. The navigator must first get the known altitude from the pilot, and then at that point he can again use that grid inside the drift meter optic, and then he times a reference point which passes from one end to the other of the grid, and then he calculates through the altitude and then the movement of the point to get the ground airspeed.
And then he's got a radio equipment up here as well. Is that specific to feed communications only into the nose?
Yeah, so he's got his headset up here. It's not specific to the nose, but it's what he would use. The cheek turrets are modifications, both the Navigators guns, and they actually cut pieces of the skin away to create the holes for those guns to go in.
Okay.
There's photos of female factory workers with a chisel chiseling out that area for that gun.
So you got the little blister windows, but you can actually kind of tell where they. It's quite obvious where it used to be just skin. So
Yeah.
prior to this modification, were there guns in the nose at all?
Yeah, there was one in the front.
Okay.
And the second one in the nose, I believe, is also a modification. Yeah.
A study was done from November 1942 till December 1943 that studied specifically heavy bombers above Europe for the Army Air Forces, and the study was done for medical support and with the goal to consider the crew members in the plane most susceptible to both injury from ground flak and fighter interceptor aircraft. And the goal of the study was done to look at which places in the plane would be best suited to add additional armor to protect the crews. Once the study was done, it outlined the most susceptible to injury and death positions within the aircraft. Out of the study done, out of 1,293, the Navigator suffered 156 incidents of wounding or death, putting them at one of the most susceptible places in the plane for injury or death within the top 12%.
A big tactic of the Germans was they would fly directly at B-17 formations because they know if they get one 20 millimeter to explode in here, they're either killing the Navigator or the Bombardier, and then there's just cloth up to the cockpit.
Yeah.
So you could, in theory, get everyone that actually controls the bomber in one good pass.
This is a very vulnerable spot. In
Yes.
The plane. Yeah.
And hence it has the most protection.
Yeah.
And there was nothing caught the spent shell casings. They just fell on the floor. So it would get messy in here.
I bet.
In a short amount of time.
And then this one here to the rear of the Bombardier, this is for the Navigator.
Yes, both of these are the Navigator's guns.
Okay, yeah.
This is his heated seat rheostat.
Yep.
So these bombers were unpressurized, and a big problem for that flying at the altitudes they did was frostbite. Exposed hands, noses, stuff like that would easily get cold. They were operating in sometimes negative 10, 20, 30 degree temperatures. So a way to fix that, a way to kind of alleviate that a little bit is they would actually have electrically heated flight suits. And you can see, you can turn that dial and actually select how hot you want your suit to be.
Yeah.
And it plugs in, I think it fits 2 in there.
Okay.
So if you had to move, you would unplug yourself. You'd also unplug yourself from your mic box, which one of them should be around, like behind you.
Above you.
Yes, there's one. That's an interphone jack.
Here's one here. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you would have to unplug yourself from 2 things to move around.
Okay.